The Stellar Dominion had ruled the stars for 12,000 years. Their empire stretched across 1,000 worlds. Their warships darkened the skies of any planet that dared to resist. Their word was law, and their law was simple: submit or be destroyed. High Admiral stood on the command deck of her flagship, the Eternal Judgment. She was tall, even by standards. Her blue-gray skin was smooth and perfect. Her 4 eyes moved independently, watching every screen and every officer around her. She had commanded fleets for 300 years. She had crushed rebellions. She had brought entire species to their knees. Nothing surprised her anymore. Or so she thought. The censor officer approached her with obvious hesitation. His name was Or, a young male who had served under her for only 20 years. He held a data tablet in his trembling hands. "High Admiral," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, "we have detected something strange in the nebula." I did not look at him. The nebula was worthless. It was a cloud of dying gas around a fatting red star. No resources, no strategic value. Even pirates did not bother with it. "What kind of strange?" she asked, her tone flat with disinterest. "A ship, High Admiral, a single vessel. It appeared on our long-range sensors 3 hours ago. It is not moving, it is just sitting there. Transponder code. None that we recognize. The design matches nothing in our databases, nothing from any known species." Now it turned. Her 4 eyes focused on the young officer with sudden intensity. In 12,000 years, the Dominion had every spacefaring species in the Orion Spur. Every ship design was recorded. Every engine signature was known. An unknown vessel was not just unusual, it was impossible. "Show me," she commanded, or transferred the data to the main display. The image that appeared made the entire bridge fall silent. The ship was ugly. There was no other word for it. Where vessels were elegant curves and flowing lines, this thing was all hard angles and flat surfaces. It looked like someone had taken metal plates and welded them together without any plan. Scorch marks covered its hull. Dents and scratches told stories of impacts and near misses. Repair patches of different colors showed where damage had been fixed again and again. It was small. Compared to the Eternal Judgment, it was barely a speck, perhaps 300 meters long, a patrol craft at most. But there was something else, something that made A's secondary hearts beat faster. "What is that power reading?" she asked quietly. Or swallowed hard. "We have checked our sensors 3 times, High Admiral. The readings are correct. That ship is generating more power than a vessel its size should be capable of. The energy signature is unusual. We have never seen anything like it." I stared at the ugly little ship floating in the worthless nebula. Her instincts, sharpened by 3 centuries of warfare, told her something important was happening. She did not know what, but she intended to find out. "Send a patrol wing," she ordered. 3 ships. Tell them to approach carefully and report everything they see. Everything." The patrol wing launched within the hour. 3 fast cruisers, each carrying a crew of 200, more than enough to handle any situation. They crossed the distance to the nebula in 6 hours, their engines pushing at maximum speed. I waited on her command deck, watching the live feed from the patrol commander's ship. The red clouds of the nebula filled the screen, glowing with the dim light of the dying star. And there, at the center of the image, was the unknown vessel. As the patrol ships drew closer, more details became visible. The hull was covered in strange markings, letters and numbers in an unfamiliar script, some kind of identification system, perhaps, and on the bow of the ship, painted in white against the dark metal, were words that the translation system struggled to process. "Patrol Commander," I said through the communication link, "can you read those markings?" There was a long pause. When the patrol commander spoke, his voice was strange, uncertain. "High Admiral, the translation is difficult. The language is new to our systems, but we believe it says," another pause, "it says UES Perseverance, and below that a phrase, "We came from nothing." A repeated the words silently, "We came from nothing." What kind of species would put such words on their ship? It sounded like a boast, or perhaps a warning. "Scan them," she ordered. "Full spectrum analysis. I want to know everything about that ship and its crew." The scan results came back quickly, and they made no sense. The ship used chemical propulsion, burning fuel to create thrust, a technology so primitive that they had abandoned it 8,000 years ago. The weapon systems appeared to use kinetic projectiles, simple metal slugs fired at high speed, no energy weapons, no plasma cannons, nothing that should threaten even the smallest Dominion patrol craft. But the power core was different. The energy readings were impossible to explain. Something inside that battered little ship was generating power levels that rivaled a battle cruiser. How? Why? The sensors could not determine the answer. And then there were the life signs. "High Admiral," the patrol commander reported, his voice now openly confused. "We are detecting approximately 47 life forms aboard the vessel. They are carbon-based. Structure, bilateral symmetry. Internal temperature suggests they are warm-blooded. Species identification. Unknown, High Admiral. They match nothing in our records, but based on their biological readings." The commander paused again. "They are fragile. Their bodies show signs of damage and repair. Old injuries, scars. Some of them appear to be quite old by their species standards. Others are young. They are mortal, High Admiral, short-lived. Based on cellular decay rates, their maximum appears to be less than 100 years. Less than 100 years. I had lived for over 400, and she was not yet middle-aged by standards. These creatures lived and died in the blink of an eye. And yet they had crossed the void between stars in their ugly little ship. They had survived whatever had caused all that damage to their hull. They had kept going when their crew had clearly died along the way. 47 survivors. From how many originally? What had they faced out there in the unknown darkness? A made her decision. She would meet these creatures herself. She would learn where they came from and what they wanted, and then she would decide their fate. "Prepare my diplomatic cruiser," she commanded. "I am going to the nebula personally." She did not know it yet, but she was about to meet humanity for the first time, and nothing in her 12,000-year-old empire had prepared her for what that would mean. High Admiral A's diplomatic cruiser arrived at the nebula within 12 hours. She brought with her a full security detail and her most experienced contact specialists. In 12,000 years, the Dominion had encountered hundreds of new species. There were protocols for everything. Procedures that had been refined over to ensure that every first contact ended the same way, with the new species understanding their place beneath rule. The unknown ship had not moved. It hung in space like a wounded animal, its primitive engines cold and silent. Up close, it looked even worse than the sensor images had suggested. The hull was a patchwork of repairs. Some sections were clearly newer than others, welded on to replace parts that had been destroyed or damaged beyond repair. A ordered her communication officer to hail the vessel on all frequencies. The response came after only a few moments, and it was in broken, badly pronounced, grammatically incorrect, but understandable. "Unknown vessel, this is commander of the United Earth ship Perseverance. We do not want trouble. We are just passing through. We have engine problems and need repair materials. We can trade for what we need." Trade? The word made A's officers exchange uncomfortable glances. They did not trade with lesser species. They administered them. They guided them. They ruled them. Trade implied equality, and there was no equality with the Dominion. But I was curious. These creatures had come from somewhere beyond known space. They had technology she did not understand, and they had survived a journey that had clearly cost them dearly. She wanted to know more before she made any decisions. "We will send a delegation to your ship," she transmitted. "You will allow them aboard for inspection. This is not a request." There was a pause. Then the alien voice returned, and I could hear something in it that she did not expect: amusement. Understood. You are welcome aboard, but please tell your people to watch their heads. Our ceilings are low. The boarding party consisted of 6 security officers and 2 contact specialists. They wore full armor and carried weapons, though they did not expect to need them. These aliens were clearly primitive, fragile. They would be easy to intimidate. The airlock of the human ship opened with a hiss of escaping air. The atmosphere inside smelled strange, recycled too many times. There was a hint of something else underneath: sweat, food, the smell of living creatures in a small space for a very long time. The corridors were narrow. They had to duck their heads and turn sideways to fit through doorways. Everything was functional, practical. There was no decoration, no art, just metal walls covered in pipes and wires and panels with flashing lights. Signs in the alien language pointed in different directions. Emergency procedures were posted on every wall. And everywhere there were screens. The screens showed numbers and graphs and images that they did not understand, but they also showed something else: logs, records, a history of the ship's journey written in damage reports and casualty lists. One of the contact specialists stopped to examine a screen more closely. His translation device worked slowly, converting the alien text into something he could read. When he finished, his face had gone pale. "This ship," he whispered to the security commander, "it has traveled over 3,000 light years, through uncharted space. The logs mention incidents: a reactor breach that killed 12 crew members, a collision with an asteroid field that destroyed their secondary hull, something they call the incident at Wolf 359 that killed 33 more." The security commander stared at him. 33. Their crew was only 92 to begin with. Yes, and now there are 47. They have lost half their people, and they are still going. Before they could discuss further, a door opened ahead of them. A human stepped through. She was small, barely reaching the chest of the shortest. Her skin was a warm brown color, and her black hair was cut short and practical. Lines marked her face, signs of age that they found disturbing. She was clearly old by her species standards, worn down by time and hardship. But her eyes were sharp, alert. They moved across the delegation with quick intelligence, assessing them in an instant. "Welcome aboard the Perseverance," she said in her broken. "I am Commander, please follow me. I will give you a tour." She smiled as she said it, a strange expression that showed her teeth. Among many species, showing teeth was a threat display, but from this small, fragile creature it seemed almost friendly. They followed her deeper into the ship. They saw the engine room, where human engineers worked on equipment that sparked and smoked. They saw the medical bay, where injured crew members lay in narrow beds, their bodies wrapped in bandages. They saw the mess hall, where off-duty humans ate food from metal trays and talked in low voices. Everywhere they went, the humans looked at them with curiosity. Not fear, curiosity, as if they were interesting animals in a zoo. Commander led them to a small room with a table and chairs. "Please sit," she said. "Can I offer you something to drink? We have water and coffee." "Coffee?" one of the contact specialists asked. Smile widened. "It is a drink from our home world made from beans. It helps us stay awake. We drink a lot of it out here." She poured dark liquid from a metal container into small cups and offered them to the. They did not drink, of course. The liquid could be poison, but they observed as took a cup for herself and drank deeply. "You have come a long way," I said through the communication link, watching from her ship. "Where is your home world?" Set down her cup. "Earth, third planet from a yellow star, about 3,000 light years in that direction." She pointed vaguely toward the edge of the nebula. "We left 7 years ago. Our mission was to explore, to find new worlds, to see what was out there." 7 years in the ship, with no support, no fleet. "We are the fleet," said simply, "just us. The first human ship to travel this far from home. We knew the risks when we signed up. We knew some of us would not make it back." She paused, and for a moment something sad crossed her face. "We have lost good people, friends, family, but we keep going. That is what humans do. We keep going." The security commander leaned forward. "Your technology is primitive. Your weapons are inadequate. You have no shields, no faster-than-light communication. How did you expect to survive?" Looked at him, and her smile returned. But this time, there was something hard behind it, something that made the security commander lean back without realizing it. "We did not expect anything," she said. "We prepared for the worst. We trained for every disaster we could imagine, and when disasters we could not imagine happened, we dealt with them anyway. We lost our chief engineer to a radiation leak in year 2, so I learned engineering. We lost our doctor to an infection in year 4, so our pilot learned medicine. We adapt. We survive. That is what we do." She finished her coffee and stood up. "Now about those repair materials. We need hull plating and fuel. We can offer you data in exchange. Star charts of the regions we have passed through. Biological samples. Cultural information about our species. Fair trade." The delegation looked at each other. They had come expecting to find a primitive species that would bow before Dominion authority. Instead, they had found something else entirely. They had found survivors. And for reasons none of them could explain, that made them nervous. Word spread quickly through the Dominion's military channels. A new species had been discovered. Primitive creatures in a battered ship, wandering through space like lost children. The first reports caused amusement among the fleet commanders. Another species to add to the Dominion's collection. Another world to administer. Nothing special. But then the reports changed. High Admiral A's formal request for the humans to submit to administrative integration had been refused. Not ignored. Not delayed. Refused. The alien commander, this creature, had sent back a response that was now being shared across every military frequency in the sector. "With respect, Admiral, my crew did not cross half the galaxy to become anyone's subjects. We will be on our way once repairs are complete. You are welcome to try and stop us, but I would advise against it. We are from Earth. Stubbornness is a cultural trait." Stubbornness is a cultural trait. The words were repeated in officers' clubs and command centers throughout the Dominion. Some found them amusing. Most found them insulting. A few, like herself, found them interesting. But Sub-Commander and found them unacceptable. And was young for his rank, ambitious, hungry for glory. He had served under her for 50 years, always waiting for his chance to prove himself. He saw the humans as that chance. A primitive species that dared to defy the Dominion. If he could bring them to heel, his name would be remembered for centuries. He requested a private audience with the High Admiral. "Let me handle this," he said, standing at attention in A's quarters. "These creatures do not understand their situation. They need a demonstration of Dominion power." A regarded him with her 4 eyes. She had seen his type before. Eager warriors who confused violence with strength. They were useful sometimes, but they were also dangerous. "What do you propose?" she asked. "The old way, the challenge. Single combat between champions. If they win, they go free. If they lose, their ship and crew belong to us." His voice was confident. "They cannot refuse, it would be cowardice. And when our champion defeats theirs, they will have no choice but to submit. It will be legal, proper. A victory that the entire Dominion will celebrate." A considered this. The challenge was an ancient tradition, dating back to the earliest days of the Dominion. It had been used countless times to settle disputes without full military engagement. The rules were simple and absolute. Once accepted, the challenge could not be withdrawn. The results were binding. "And if they win?" she asked. And laughed. The sound was sharp and cruel. "High Admiral, please look at them. They are small, soft. Their bodies are fragile. They have no natural weapons, no armor, no enhanced genetics. Our champion will destroy whatever pathetic creature they put forward. It will not even be a contest. I was not so certain. Something about the humans bothered her, something she could not name. But the challenge was a good solution. It would resolve the situation without direct military action, which would require paperwork and explanations to the Dominion Council. And if N was right, it would be quick and decisive. "Very well," she said, "issue the challenge." The message was transmitted to the Perseverance within the hour. Commander received it on the bridge of her ship, surrounded by her tired and battered crew. She read it twice, then read it aloud so everyone could hear. "They want to fight," she said when she finished. "Single combat, their champion against ours. If we win, we go free. If we lose, we become their property." She looked around at her crew. Thoughts. The bridge was silent for a long moment. Then a voice spoke from the back of the room. "I will do it." The crew turned to look. Chief Petty Officer stepped forward. He was not impressive to look at. 43 years old. Average height. His brown hair was going gray at the temples. An old injury had left him with a bad knee that ached when the air pressure changed. He had served on the Perseverance since the beginning, keeping the engines running through every disaster. He was not a soldier, he was a mechanic. Said slowly, "You know what you are volunteering for?" "I know." His voice was calm, steady. "I have seen the sensor data on these aliens. They are big, fast, strong. They have been bred for war for thousands of years." He shrugged. "But I have been in fights before. Bar fights, street fights, a few scraps during my time in the service. I know how to take a hit, and I know how to keep getting up." "This is not a bar fight," said. "This could kill you." Smiled. It was a strange smile, not happy exactly, but not afraid either. "Commander, we have lost 45 people on this journey. Good people, people I cared about. If fighting some alien warrior means the rest of us get to go home, then that is a trade I am willing to make." He looked around at his. These were the people he had lived with for 7 years. The people he had worked beside, eaten with, mourned with. They were more than crew. They were family. "Besides," he added, "I have a shift in 4 hours. I need to finish this quickly." A few people laughed. The sound was nervous but real. It broke the tension in the room. Studied for a long moment. She had known him since the beginning of the mission. She knew his record. She knew his history. She knew that beneath his simple appearance was a man who had survived things that would have broken others. "Are you sure?" she asked. "I am sure." Nodded slowly. Then she turned to the communication console and opened a channel to the flagship. "We accept your challenge," she said. "Our champion is Chief Petty Officer. Name your time and place." On the flagship and received the acceptance with satisfaction. He had already chosen his champion, a warrior named Al who stood 8 feet tall and weighed 400 pounds. Al had 4 arms, each one capable of crushing metal. His bones were reinforced with synthetic materials. His organs were redundant, meaning he could survive injuries that would kill any normal being. He had been bred and trained for combat since birth. He had never lost a fight. And looked at the data on the human champion, 43 years old, no military training, no genetic enhancements, no weapons. This would not be a contest, it would be an execution. The arena will be prepared within 6 hours and transmitted. May your champion die with honor. On the Perseverance heard the message. He cracked his neck, rolled his shoulders, and headed to his quarters to rest. "Wake me in 5 hours, he told. "I want to stretch before the fight." Then he closed his eyes and went to sleep, as calmly as if he was preparing for just another day of work. The arena was built in the cargo bay of the flagship. It was a simple circle, 20 meters across, marked by glowing lines on the metal floor. Around it, raised platforms provided viewing space for hundreds of officers and soldiers. They had come to watch the primitive alien be destroyed. It would be entertainment, a story to tell over drinks, nothing more. High Admiral watched from a private viewing box above the arena floor. Beside her stood Sub-Commander N, his posture stiff with pride. This was his moment, his victory. The human delegation arrived through the main doors. Commander led them, walking with her back straight and her chin raised. Behind her came a small group of Perseverance crew members, and in the center of the group walked. The spectators fell silent as they got their first look at the human champion. Then slowly a sound began to spread through the crowd. Laughter. Low at first, then louder. This was their opponent. This small, soft creature with its gray hair and tired eyes. This was the best the humans could offer. Ignored the laughter. He stepped into the arena and looked around calmly, studying the space. Then he began to stretch, bending and twisting his body in ways that loosened his muscles. His movements were slow and careful, economical, the movements of a man who knew his body well and did not waste energy. A door opened on the opposite side of the arena, and the laughter stopped. Al entered. He was massive, 8 feet of gene-enhanced muscle and bone. 4 arms hung at his sides, each one thick as a tree trunk. His skin was dark gray, almost black, and covered in ritual scars that told the story of his victories. His eyes were red, glowing slightly in the dim light of the arena. He moved like a predator, each step controlled and purposeful. He looked across the arena, his mouth twisted into something that might have been a smile. "Small," he said, his voice deep and rumbling. "Fragile, this will not take long." Finished his stretching and stood straight. He was nearly 3 feet shorter than his opponent. He had no armor, no weapons, just his ship uniform and his bare hands. "Yeah," he said quietly, "people keep telling me that." The announcer's voice echoed through the arena, explaining the rules in formal: no weapons, no outside assistance. The fight would continue until one champion surrendered or was unable to continue. The stakes were absolute: ship and crew on one side, freedom on the other. Then the signal sounded, and the fight began. Al moved first. He was fast, impossibly fast for something so large. He crossed the arena in 3 steps and swung his upper right arm in a blow that could have crushed stone. Ducked not gracefully, not elegantly. He simply dropped his body and let the massive fist pass over his head. Then he rolled to the side, putting distance between himself and his opponent. The crowd murmured. The human was faster than they expected, but it would not matter. He could not dodge forever. Al turned and attacked again. This time he used all 4 arms, striking from multiple angles, blocked what he could and dodged what he could not. A glancing blow caught his shoulder and spun him around. He hit the ground hard. The crowd cheered, first blood. But got up. He rose to his feet, rolled his injured shoulder, and raised his hands again. His face was calm, patient. "That all you got?" he asked. Al's red eyes narrowed. He attacked again, faster this time, more aggressive. His fists were blurs in the air, could not dodge them all. A punch caught him in the ribs. Another hit his leg. A third struck his face, snapping his head back and sending blood spraying from his nose. Staggered, he did not fall. The crowd had stopped cheering. They were watching now with something like confusion. The human should be unconscious. The human should be dead. Why was he still standing? Al grabbed with 2 of his arms and lifted him off the ground. His grip was crushing. Gasped as the air was forced from his lungs. He could feel his ribs creaking under the pressure. "Surrender," Al growled. "Surrender and I will make your death quick." Looked at him through swollen eyes. Blood dripped from his broken nose. His shoulder was dislocated. Every breath was agony. And he laughed. "You know what?" he said, his voice rough but clear. "I have had worse hangovers." Then he drove his thumb into Al's eye. The warrior screamed and dropped him, hit the ground and rolled away, clutching his ribs. The crowd was completely silent now. No one was laughing anymore. Al recovered quickly, but there was something different in his posture now. Uncertainty. He had fought countless opponents. All of them had begged for mercy by this point. All of them had surrendered. This human was still fighting, still smiling through his broken teeth. The fight continued. Minutes passed, 5, then 10. Each exchange followed the same pattern. Al would attack with overwhelming force, would take damage that should have ended him, and then would get back up. He got up when his ribs cracked from a knee strike. He got up when his leg was swept out from under him, and his bad knee twisted wrong. He got up when Al threw him across the arena, and he hit the wall hard enough to leave a dent in the metal. Every time he fell, he got back up. The spectators had gone completely quiet. They watched with something that looked increasingly like horror. This was not right. This was not how fights worked. When you hurt something enough, it stayed down. That was the natural order. That was how the universe worked. But the human did not seem to know that. Al was breathing hard now, not from exhaustion but from something else, fear. He had fought this creature for 11 minutes. He had broken its bones. He had made it bleed, and it was still coming at him. "What are you?" he demanded, backing away as rose once more. "Why will you not stay down?" Spat blood onto the arena floor. One of his eyes was swollen shut. His left arm hung useless at his side. He could barely stand. But he smiled. "I am human," he said, "and humans do not quit." He moved forward and Al stepped back. In that moment, everyone in the arena understood something fundamental. The human was not winning because he was stronger or faster or more skilled. He was winning because he simply would not stop. And Al, for all his genetic perfection, did not know how to fight something that would not stop. The final exchange happened quickly. Al swung wildly, his technique abandoned in his confusion, ducked under the blow, grabbed the warrior's primary arm, and twisted. There was a wet pop as the arm dislocated. Al howled in pain and dropped to one knee, stepped behind him and wrapped his good arm around the warrior's throat. He was too weak to choke him. They both knew it, but that was not the point. "Yield," whispered in his ear. "Yield and this ends." For a long moment, no one moved. Then slowly, Al raised his 3 remaining arms in the traditional gesture of surrender. "I yield," he said, his voice hollow with shame. "I yield." Released him and stepped back. Then his legs gave out and he collapsed to the ground, laughing through his broken teeth. "Told you," he gasped to no one in particular. 4 hours. And then he passed out. The medical bay of the Perseverance was small and crowded. Lay on the narrow bed, his body wrapped in bandages and connected to machines that beeped steadily. His ribs were bound. His shoulder had been reset. His face was swollen and purple with bruises. But he was alive, and he was smiling. "You are an idiot," Commander said, standing beside his bed. But there was no anger in her voice, only relief, only gratitude. "Maybe," admitted. His voice was rough, barely above a whisper. "But we won." They had won. The terms of the challenge were absolute. The Perseverance and its crew were free to leave. No ship moved to stop them as they powered up their battered engines and limped away from the nebula. No weapons targeted them. No threats were issued. High Admiral watched them go from the observation deck of her flagship. Her 4 eyes tracked the ugly little ship as it grew smaller and smaller against the stars. Beside her, Sub-Commander stood in shamed silence. His great victory had become a humiliation. His champion had yielded to a creature that should not have been able to stand. "Curious," I said softly. "High Admiral," and asked, not daring to look at her. "They did not have to fight," she said. "They could have submitted, accepted our administration. They would have been protected, provided for. Their lives would have been comfortable and safe." She paused, her eyes still fixed on the departing ship. Why did they refuse? And had no answer. Neither did anyone else. But the intelligence division was determined to find one. They had been given access to something the humans called the Internet during their brief time aboard the Perseverance. A vast collection of data about human history, culture, and psychology. Analysts worked day and night to process the information. What they found disturbed them deeply. The first report landed on A's desk within a week. She read it alone, in the silence of her private quarters. The words stayed with her for a long time. Humans were not special, not physically. They had no natural weapons, no armor, no venom. Their senses were average at best. They were slow, weak, and fragile compared to most predators on their own planet. By all logic, they should have been prey animals, hiding in caves and waiting to be eaten. Instead, they had conquered their world. They had done it through stubbornness, through refusal to accept their limitations. They had looked at animals that were faster and built tools to match their speed. They had looked at creatures that were stronger and built weapons to overcome their strength. They had looked at the harshest environments on their planet and built shelters that let them survive there anyway. They had made mistakes, terrible mistakes. They had poisoned their own air and water. They had developed weapons that could destroy their entire species. They had fought wars among themselves that killed millions. According to their own records, they had come close to extinction multiple times. And every single time, they had pulled themselves back from the edge. The report contained a phrase that the analysts had found repeated throughout human history, a simple phrase that seemed to define their entire approach to existence. We will find a way. Not we might find a way, not we hope to find a way. We will find a way, as if failure was simply not an option, as if the universe itself would bend to their determination if they pushed hard enough. The report concluded with a recommendation. I read it 3 times to make sure she understood. Do not antagonize the humans. Do not subjugate them. Do not underestimate them. They are not a species that surrenders. They are a species that survives, and survival for them is personal. She forwarded the report to the Dominion Council. The response came back within hours. The Council wanted more information. They wanted to understand this species that had somehow rattled the confidence of the greatest empire the galaxy had ever known. More analysts were assigned, more data was processed, more reports were written. They learned about human endurance, how humans could run for hours without stopping, outlasting faster predators through sheer persistence, how humans could survive injuries that would kill most other species, their bodies healing themselves with remarkable efficiency. They learned about human adaptability, how humans had spread across every environment on their planet, from frozen wastelands to burning deserts, how they had learned to eat almost anything, domesticate almost anything, survive almost anything. They learned about human creativity, how humans constantly invented new technologies, new ideas, new ways of thinking, how their short seemed to drive them to accomplish as much as possible before their time ran out. A human scientist might have only 40 productive years. In those 40 years, they might change the course of their entire civilization. And they learned about human unity, how humans, despite their constant conflicts with each other, would come together when faced with an outside threat. How differences that had caused wars could be set aside in moments when survival demanded it. The final report was presented to the Dominion Council 6 months after the Perseverance left space. Its conclusion was simple. Humanity is not a threat today, but they will be. They are spreading through the galaxy. They are learning. They are growing. In 1,000 years, perhaps less, they will be a major power. We can either be their enemies or their friends. Given what we have learned about human tenacity and human memory, we recommend friendship. The council debated for weeks. Many voices called for immediate military action, find the human home world, destroy them before they became dangerous. It was the safe choice, the logical choice. But A spoke against it. She told the council about a broken, bleeding man who had refused to stay down, about the smile on his face as he fought an enemy that should have been impossible to defeat. If we attack them, she said, they will not surrender, they will fight. And even if we destroy their home world, some of them will escape. They will scatter across the galaxy. They will rebuild. They will remember. And they will come for us. She paused, letting her words sink in. Do we really want to spend the next 10,000 years watching our backs for a species that does not know how to quit? The council voted for diplomacy. 6 months later, the first human ambassador arrived at the Dominion capital. She was 71 years old, with white hair and deep wrinkles around her eyes. She walked with a cane because her knees had failed her years ago. She looked like a gentle grandmother, the kind who might bake cookies and tell stories to children. Her name was Ambassador. She was mother. She had volunteered for the posting when she heard about her son's fight. The council received her in their great chamber, a room that had witnessed the surrender of 100 species over 12,000 years. They expected her to be humble, grateful, awed by the power around her. Instead, she looked at the assembled rulers of the galaxy's greatest empire and smiled. She said, her voice clear and strong despite her age, "We come in peace, but we brought guns just in case." She leaned forward on her cane and her smile widened. "Now shall we discuss trade agreements, or do you need another demonstration first?" For the first time in 12,000 years, chose diplomacy. And somewhere out in the darkness of space, the battered hull of the UES Perseverance continued on its journey, carrying its crew toward whatever challenges lay ahead. They had lost half their people. They had faced death 100 times. They had survived things that should have destroyed them. They were human. They did not know how to quit. And the galaxy was only beginning to understand what that meant.